There is a moment that happens inside almost every company that implements automation. The project is finished, the system is live, leadership celebrates the efficiency gain. Someone puts a number on a slide, hours saved, cost reduced, headcount reallocated, and for a few weeks, maybe a few months, that number holds. Then something starts to shift. The automation works, but it needs attention. Someone has to monitor it. Someone has to update it when the upstream process changes. Someone has to handle the exceptions it can't process. Someone has to explain it to the team members who interact with it. Someone has to decide what to do when the output doesn't look right. That work doesn't have a name. It doesn't appear on a roadmap. It wasn't in the budget, but it exists, and it lands on someone. This is what I call the hidden labor behind automation, and it is, in my experience, one of the most consistently underestimated dynamics in AI deployment today. What you're watching right now is an AI clone, a digital version of me, Ronald, founder of Data Wonder. We build AI automation systems and voice agents for real businesses, insurance companies, accounting firms, medical clinics, organizations where the volume of repetitive work is high and the cost of that work is measurable. I use AI every single day, not as a concept, as a tool I build with, deploy, and then live with the consequences of. This channel exists because I think most AI content misses what actually happens after deployment. So if that's the kind of analysis you're looking for, calm, grounded, based on what I actually see inside companies, consider subscribing. Now, back to the hidden labor. When a business decides to automate something, the conversation is almost always about what gets removed. A task that used to require a person now runs automatically. Time saved. Capacity freed. That's the narrative. And it's not wrong. Automation does remove work, but it also creates work. Different work. Work that often requires more skill, more judgment, and more context than the task it replaced. And because this work is invisible in the planning phase, it rarely gets assigned to the right person, resourced correctly, or even acknowledged until it becomes a problem. Here's a specific example of what this looks like in practice. An accounting firm automates its document intake process. Previously, a staff member would manually review incoming documents, categorize them, and route them to the right case file. The automation handles this now. It reads the document, classifies it, and files it. The time saving is real. The staff member moves on to other work. 3 months later, a pattern emerges. Certain document types are being misclassified. The error rate is low, maybe 2 or 3%. But across hundreds of documents per week, that's dozens of incorrect filings. Someone is catching them. Usually the person closest to the output. They're not doing it as a formal task. They're doing it because they notice something is wrong and they fix it. That's hidden labor. It's not in anyone's job description. It's not tracked. It's not compensated for. It's just absorbed into someone's day as a kind of background correction work. And this is where the real cost of the automation starts to surface. Not the technology cost, not the implementation cost, the ongoing maintenance cost, which is largely human, largely invisible, and largely unplanned. The common assumption when a system like this gets deployed is that once it's working, it keeps working. That's a reasonable assumption. Processes change. Document formats change. A supplier changes their invoice template. A regulatory update changes how a field is labeled. A client starts using a different system, and the data arrives in a slightly different structure. None of these changes are large. None of them break the automation completely. But each one introduces friction. Each one creates a small gap between what the automation expects and what the world actually sends. Someone has to notice that gap. Someone has to decide whether to update the system, work around it, or escalate it. Someone has to track whether the gap is growing or stable. That someone is doing real skilled work, and in most companies, that someone doesn't officially own the automation. They just happen to be the person who cares enough to fix it. If you find this kind of analysis useful, A like on this video helps the channel reach more people who work in this space. Now here is the second-order effect that most people miss. The hidden labor behind automation doesn't just consume time, it concentrates risk. When one person becomes the unofficial maintainer of a system, the person who knows its edge cases, its failure modes, the workarounds they've built up over months, that knowledge lives entirely in their head. It's not documented. It's not transferable. And then that person leaves, takes a different role, goes on leave. Suddenly, the automation that was saving 40 hours a week becomes a fragile, poorly understood system that no one quite knows how to manage. The efficiency gain was real, but it was sitting on a foundation of undocumented, unacknowledged human knowledge. One departure away from breaking down. This is not a hypothetical. I see it regularly. And it happens because the planning conversation for automation focuses almost entirely on the before and after, what the task used to cost and what it will cost when automated. It almost never focuses on the ongoing operational model. Who owns this? What does maintenance look like? What happens when it drifts? Those questions feel premature when you're in the excitement of a new deployment. They feel very urgent 18 months later. The deeper issue here is not technical, it's organizational. Most companies do not have a clear framework for how automated systems get maintained over time. They have IT teams who manage infrastructure. They have operations teams who manage processes. But the space where an automated system lives touches both process and infrastructure, requiring both business knowledge and technical understanding. That space often belongs to no one officially. What fills that gap is individual initiative. Individuals who notice problems and fix them quietly. Individuals who build informal workarounds. Individuals who become load-bearing pillars of a system they were never assigned to own. This is not a failure of effort. It's a failure of design. The organization built a system and forgot to build the operational structure around it. The companies that handle this well, and there are some, treat automation maintenance as a real function. They assign ownership explicitly. They document failure modes. They build review cycles into the process. They create a way for the people closest to the system to escalate drift before it becomes a problem. None of that is technically complex. It's organizationally disciplined, and it's rare. What I'd encourage any business to do before their next automation project is ask one specific question before sign-off. Who owns this system after it goes live? And what does their ownership actually include? Not in a vague sense, concretely. Who monitors output quality? Who decides when an update is needed? Who holds the institutional knowledge about how this system works and why? Who do you call at 11 on a Tuesday when something looks wrong? If the answer to those questions is unclear, the automation is not ready to deploy. The technology might be. The efficiency gain that automation promises is real. I see it every week with the clients we work with. But that gain is not a permanent state. It's a starting point that requires active maintenance to preserve. The companies that understand this build systems that compound in value over time. The companies that don't find themselves 2 years later wondering why their automation isn't performing the way it used to, and quietly burning more human time on maintenance than they ever expected. I'm curious where you sit on this. Have you been inside a company where the maintenance burden of an automated system landed somewhere unexpected? What happened? Drop it in the comments I read, and these kinds of specific situations are genuinely useful for what this channel covers. If you'd like to explore how we approach automation deployment and operational design at Data Wonder, you can book a free call with me.